So as we look at this, to be able to change our thoughts, we have to realize that it's possible to do that. And this is the way I'll explain this as we look at the board here. So we have a triggering event here. This could be, let's just take, for example, the trash is not taken out. You ask your spouse to do it. You come home and it's not there. You've had a hard day. Everything seems to be going wrong. And now this tends to be the trigger. It's an event that triggers it. You see that the trash is piled up. He's on the couch. TV is on. So now you're angry. This leads to the response over here to the right, which generally comes about as an argument. You fight over it. What we need to realize is that between that event, there is this space of time. Now, generally speaking, it happens in a flash. We see something and we go into a rage. But in actuality, what happens is we're rehearsing something in our mind. We're saying something to ourselves. Generally, that goes something like, we talk in terms of absolutes. We may not verbalize it out loud, but we say things like, he always does this. This never is done the way I wanted it to be done. And we use those, I always seem to be the one to do this. So we use those absolutes, and those things are being rehearsed in our mind, which leads us to, we have a decision, a choice to make. At that moment, if we'll slow down and realize this conversation that's going on in our heads, we have the ability to choose what we say to ourselves. If we decide and make a decision that we're going to say different things instead of the typical that leads us over here to the negative, which leads us to this response of fighting, if we change what's going on in our inner dialogue and we decide that we're going to make this positive, you can vocalize how you feel and all of that, but you slow down enough to change the dialogue that's going on in your head. What happens is this response becomes something quite different. So instead of having the anger and the fighting, this can turn into something positive. You can still move toward a solution. You have the ability at that point to solve the problem and not just have an explosive emotional response. And the reality is, the reason I wanted to point this out is nothing really ever gets solved in emotional outbursts, emotional responses that are heightened. Problems aren't solved in that manner. It usually takes a calm sitting down. I just talked to a gentleman today, and he's having struggles in his marriage, and they've gone through a season over the last year where it's just been outrage, fighting, elevated speech, yelling, no physical harm at this point, but it's just been this heightened emotional thing. And it's interesting that he said he just came to a point the other day and he approached his wife and he was calm and there was really no emotions in it. But he just simply said, something's got to change or we're not going to make it. And they ended up having a conversation that was meaningful, and it pushed them down the road a little bit. It helped them at least come to terms with some things, but that couldn't happen in heightened emotional situations. And so what we want to do is we want to take this out of play. We want to make sure that the response is positive. To do that, we have to focus on what's going on in our mind, in our self-talk at this point, and it leads us to a place where we can have a better inner dialogue, leads us to a place where we have a better emotional response.